What's going on, everybody? Brandon Schaefer here. Today, let's check it out. Got these two sketches. They're the same, but the lighting scenario is different, so I thought that'd be something pretty cool to check out. Give it a shot. For some reason, I had the stream at the wrong time again. I apologize for that, but the rest of them, I believe, I just double-checked all of them. Should be good to go for the rest of the week. So yeah, I think what ends up happening is when I schedule them, sometimes it took the time, like when I scheduled them ahead of time, I was actually scheduling them at like 8:30 at night, and it kept to that time for some reason. So I'm not sure why that happened, but we got it fixed, and we got some portraits here today. So we're gonna give this a shot and see what I can do. But anyway, well, it looks like we got Philip join in. Thanks for tuning in. We got one single viewer here. Good. And he's actually at work, so okay, cool. Let's make sure this is focused. Pretty good. All right. So there you can see both the references. I'm going to be doing the one on the left first. And what's going on, Enrique and Amanda? Going to be doing the one on the left first. I know it says 13, but nobody's talking. It's a bunch of stalkers. No, I'm kidding, guys. Just kidding. Bunch of quiet folks like me watching. It's all good. I do the same thing when I watch people live. Yeah, no worries. Ego mod, I understand. I do the same thing. I don't really type much or anything. But before I get started, I just want to mention, be sure to check out my website, schaeferfineart.com. Got a lot of cool stuff on there, blog posts, all kinds of stuff, tutorials, some PDF tutorials, support page. Definitely check all that out. Music, all kinds of stuff. But anyway, let's see. I know I sound like extroverted and like I talk a lot on these streams, but it's not really how it is. Like, you know, I'm just in front of my laptop in a room by myself talking to nobody. So I'm talking to you guys, but it's not like I'm in front of a crowd or anything. So it's easier for me, but I'm pretty introverted myself. So anyway, I think I'm gonna do, man, this camera, I just wish it could expose better. Just really wish it could expose better. I think I'm gonna do these monochrome, obviously. So I'm gonna do like, just black, ivory black, keep it simple, right? Because we're just studying some lighting here, you know, just values, keeping it simple, focusing on the planes and the different lighting. And of course, right now I can't think of anything I wanted to talk about. I remembered all this stuff yesterday for lighting, and now today I can't think of anything else. Hopefully it'll come to me as I'm doing this. I'm sure it will. Yeah, the time was wrong. Yeah, I'll explain it one last time. I'm not sure what was going on with the time. I have the rest of the week fixed. I just double checked all of them. But I think when I went to schedule them this last Sunday, I was scheduling them at like 8:30 at night. I was planning them. And for some reason, it took the time that I created the stream rather than the time that I scheduled it for. So I don't know why that happened, unfortunately. Next time I'll be sure to really double check all the times again. But yeah, I apologize. I always stream the same time. I'm not going to go, 8 o'clock. Normally I wouldn't. But yeah, hopefully everybody will tune in. So we'll start out with, like I said, I'm going to do the one on the left here first. So right away, I'm just kind of analyzing the shadow shapes versus the light shapes. Like I was saying yesterday, clear separation of shadow and light. This one's a bit tricky. I'm going to look at that one more time. So the plane between the eyes, the one that's right above the nose, I think squinting at it, that's probably part of the shadow if I want to simplify. Yeah, it's kind of a tricky light situation here. Obviously there's, shadow under here. This is all connected. I think I'll make this in shadow just to connect the eyes and that whole shadow shape. Makes more sense to do that, I think. So we'll start out here with obviously this plane is the most lit up plane, as well as like the eyelid and these planes as well, the mouth. So I'll probably leave those the white of the paper for now. But I'm probably just gonna do an overall tone for most of this. Getting the lights, figuring out the lights. And hey, and look at that, I'm using a smaller brush today, imagine that. So I'm just trying to be cautious here, make sure I get these, make sure I'm doing this correctly. Trying to pay attention to these planes. All right, we got everybody tuned in. Yeah, sorry about the time, folks. I'm not sure what happened with the scheduled time, but glad everybody showed up anyway. Appreciate that. No more time mishaps this week, hopefully. So, got everything scheduled appropriately. So trying to just do this as traditional watercolor method, you know, putting the light shapes down and slowly move into the other values that are there. I messed up this one light shape, supposed to be on this other cheek, but hopefully it'll be okay still. Shouldn't have been the white of the paper anyway, so it's okay that I painted it pretty lightly. Hey, what's happening? What's going on? Yeah, 2 sets of lips. Yeah, because of if you look at the reference, they have a really indented chin type of, you know, I think it's just to exaggerate the shadow underneath the lip. But pretty crazy. Yeah, you didn't miss much, Mary, not at all. Okay, well, yeah, this is pretty much dry already. It's pretty, dries pretty quickly when you paint something this small. So now I'm trying to, so already, just by doing what I just did, what I talked about yesterday, 2 values in the light, 2 values in the dark, in the shadows. So we already got 2 light values right now. You know, this is overall kind of tone of the light, and then these are the highlights. And I might, you know, I'll keep it simplified for now. We'll just keep those light, even though the cheek is a little bit darker. You know, I think it right now it makes sense to just simplify it a bit and connect it to that plane on the mouth underneath the nose, and connect it to the one above the eye. So I feel like that's a nice graphic kind of shape, you know, with the nice eye, you know, the eye, dark eye sticking out. So we'll keep that for now. I feel like the ear could have been a little bit lighter, but hey, it's all good. So yeah, this is the 2 values in the light just by putting down 1 wash. And now I can put down a shadow, overall shadow, which could really be the reflected light, which there isn't a whole lot of reflected light in this one, and I did that on purpose. But literally I could put a shadow tone down and then put like really dark darks in there. And I could finesse some of the midtones and stuff and really get like 5 or 6 values, but let's try to keep it to like 4 and just see what it looks like, you know, very simplified graphic kind of shape, hopefully. Yeah, watercolor is really challenging. I've seen a lot of great work with watercolors too, and I wish I could do it that well, but yeah. I mean, it can be easy and logical, you know, if you, I mean, there are not rules, but there are ways to like, things to follow, but it is open to do, you know, you can keep it open. You know, you can use it any way you want, really, for the most part. I mean, generally light to dark, painting light to dark generally is a good way to go. But, you know, this is a very harsh lighting scenario, so that's kind of what I was looking to portray here. It's just a pretty harsh lighting. So there's a little triangle of light over here on the cheek. So it's kind of like the, I don't know what they call that, you know, like the Rembrandt kind of lighting. We'll try to keep that there, possibly. Oh, kind of made that the wrong shape. So I already messed that up, but that's all right. It's not a big deal. It's just supposed to be more of a diagonal rather than going straight down underneath the nose. So didn't quite get that one. Messed up the shape there. See, and by doing that shadow underneath the lip, see what you learn from this, doing that shadow underneath the lip reveals the bottom lip. Shadow on the top lip and the shadow underneath the lip reveals the lips. You don't have to like put an outline around the lips or whatever, you know, stuff like that. But I'm trying to resist the temptation to soften this, because this plane down here on the chin is actually has a gradation. I'll show you guys real quick. It has like a subtle gradation, and I'm trying to resist the urge to soften that, because I want to keep this, I mean, I'll probably do it a little bit. I want to keep this very hard edged, you know. I want to keep things hard edged and simple. It's kind of the name of the game this week. Because I'm just trying to study, you know, I'm trying to learn, study, see what works, what doesn't work. You know, this is all, you know, I can explain to you guys some things that I understand and some things that I try to pay attention to and what I try to do personally. But I'm not like an expert in this kind of stuff, obviously. With portraits, you know, it's not like my main thing. You know, I like doing landscapes and stuff like that. But, you know, I think portraits and landscapes, there's something to learn by doing both of them. And I think I really think portraits can help you with your landscapes, and landscapes can help you with your portraits. I think you can apply certain aspects of light and all kinds of stuff like that to each, you know, subject. You know, you can really learn things. So you see what I did there with this other eye? I kind of just lost it because it's not important. It's in the shadow. I can't even really see it if I squint at the reference. If you guys squint at this reference, you'll see that eye completely disappears. You don't even see it. So that's how I want to paint it. You know, I just want it to basically disappear. And by, you know, having this plane here be in shadow, it does connect, have all these connections. And then see, I already have kind of two values in the dark there for the most part. Just by finessing taking up some of the water, some of the pigment. And now I can begin going underneath here. Filling in this shadow. Sorry guys, I haven't looked at the chat in a minute. I'm just trying to focus on getting this in. I'll let it dry in a second. So there we go. Pretty simple. I mean, that's really, I mean, it's almost done. I mean, this is very, you know, there's some other planes like on the nose I can modify a little bit. And this is where, you know, you can kind of add another set of value or something to kind of tweak some things just to explain a little bit more of what's happening with the nose, you know, what's going on. But it's almost not even necessary, really. I just have this messed up this one shape, but I'm not going to be able to get that back. And the nose is a little weird as well, but it's okay. I'm using ivory black. Just using ivory black. Yeah, no worries, Philip. Sometimes Nightbot, if you like put too many emojis or if you do all caps or something, like it will, it'll just block you for 5 seconds. I don't know. I'm not sure why it does that, but I'll have to tweak the Nightbot settings. I'll have to check it out and see. I seem to prefer watercolor. Well, I don't paint with any other paint right now. I haven't painted with any other. I mean, I used gouache for the first time in a year last week, but yeah, I like watercolor is my favorite painting medium now. It's most challenging. I do like oil painting, but it's too much of a hassle. Too much. The materials are a pain. Everything's a pain with oil painting. Watercolors are so easy. Like I don't even have to clean the palette. Everything, you know, is just dirty. I don't have to worry about anything. The brushes are easy to clean. It cleans up with water. It's simple. It's easy for plein air. I can just bring the stuff anywhere. So I like watercolor for that reason. So I could go in, once this dries a little bit more, I could go in a little bit darker. I'm gonna see what happens if I do. But I kind of like this. I mean, it's pretty. I mean, it's very simple. The nose shape's a little off, you know, but it should have been sticking out there a little bit more, so I can try to finesse it a bit, tweak it a little bit or something. You know, I don't know, but maybe that helps slightly. And really, this shape here, actually, even though it's in light, since it's surrounded by all that darkness and because it's smaller, it's got to be darker. So if you look at the reference and you squint, that little triangle of light almost disappears. It's really in reflected light territory. So if I just soften this watercolor around it, boom, now it fits in a little bit more. And since I wetted that, it looks weird to you guys, but once it dries, it'll look better. But I could dry this pretty. It's already pretty dry, but dry it real quick. Handy fan here, windy. Yeah, watercolor has the least amount of waste too. I agree. I definitely agree. Oil painting, I was always scraping off all this paint and you get like this all the oily paper towels and rags and stuff all the time. It's just a pain. It's just a pain. No, I haven't done acrylic since 2015. So I'm done with acrylics. Done with acrylics. They dry too quickly. It's a pain. Yeah, no thanks. I don't like the feeling of it, how it spreads on the canvas. Oil painting is superior. Not superior, but it feels better to me. It's superior to me in that sense. It's not like a superior painting medium. I mean, you can create amazing paintings and stuff with any medium. I've seen amazing paintings with dirt on the back of somebody's car in the desert with them just using a brush. Like, you can do amazing paintings with just dirt dust, you know, like, and taking off the dust with water. So it doesn't really matter what medium you use, but to me it's just better. It's better overall feeling, better. Watercolors are just simple. I mean, some people don't like them because they're challenging, they're hard to control. It seems like they're hard to control. There's a lot of, it's just, they're difficult. They can be difficult. It takes a long time to kind of conquer them, so to speak. So some folks, you know, they don't really like messing with that stuff. Let's see if I go a bit darker, if this enhances it or if it makes it weaker. I think it's probably going to make it weaker, to be honest, but I'm just going to, we'll go with it. We'll see what happens. Maybe it'll strengthen it in some parts, but I think adding this value might weaken the whole thing. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. It's kind of strengthening it. Giving those two distinct values in the dark, I guess, that it kind of needed. Challenge is over here. I can't really see where it ends or begins, so we'll just fade it down. Because that's kind of what it looks like. Kind of just fades down. All this is pretty dark. Yeah, I think that actually helped because it shows that's like reflected light. It's like a different plane. You know, sometimes I'm just afraid of doing too much work to something because it always, usually the more you put on it, it kind of weakens it. If you're going for like a loose feel, you know, a looser feel to your painting. See, like this plane up here, I probably don't need to darken it. Because I feel like that weakens it. Because I like that strong shape just being all one thing. I think the cheekbone's sticking out way too much. I think my drawing's off, but here, we'll try to stick out the eyebrow a little bit. Maybe that'll help balance it a bit more. Yeah, maybe that helped. Maybe that helped. Do you think doing these portrait studies that are so precise structured is necessary if you plan to do more loose portraits? Yeah, I think so. I definitely think so, because if you noticed with with your dogs that I painted Cubs Win, I wasn't very loose with doing those because I haven't painted many dogs. So the more you paint something, the more loose you become with it, you know. It's hard to start off being just very loose because if you don't know how to be controlled with it, it's very hard to loosen up with it. That's how I feel about it. That's usually how it happens a lot. You know, usually something I'm new to painting, like portraits or something, I end up being very tight with it in the beginning. And it just takes practice to loosen up a bit. Yeah, let's turn this down. There we go. Actually, this whole eye shape should be just a bit darker. Because it's smaller. It's a smaller shape, even though it's in the light. It's better if it's a little bit darker because it's smaller. You know, maybe even this lip could be a bit darker. When buying watercolor paints, can you buy cheap paints? Is there a big difference? I have no clue. So here's the difference. Here's the difference between any medium. It might be different ingredients with watercolor, but let's say you buy student grade paint, no matter if it's oil paint, watercolor, acrylic paint. The difference between cheaper paint and more expensive paint. It's very simple difference. The artist grade, the more professional, expensive paints, they have more pigment in them. So what that means, so let's say oil paint, for instance. Oil paint is pigment with oil, right? Maybe there's a few other little ingredients to stabilize it so it doesn't separate, blah, 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 blah. But let's say it's oil and paint, and oil and powder, pigment powder, and they mix it together to get a paint. That's what paint is. So professional grade paint is nothing but pure pigment, the color. So like for this red, professional grade paint is nothing but red powder, pigment, and oil. Mix it together to a certain consistency, whatever. Student grade paint, cheaper quality paint, they cut the pigment load in half, and instead of adding color pigment, they use white chalk dust. So it's 50% pigment, 50% white chalk dust, or whatever the ratio is, 60-40. I think most of the time it's 50-50 probably. So basically, and then they mix it with oil. So what happens is the pigment isn't as strong, and therefore it's cheaper paint because there's not as much pigment. It doesn't cost as much to make it. And then you get your colors. When you mix colors together, you get different color mixtures. Sometimes the mixtures can be different color than they normally would be. Your pigment load isn't as strong. It's just different. So that's the difference between student grade paints and professional quality paints. So there's going to be a difference. I mean, in the beginning, my first paintings and stuff, I used cheaper paint. There's nothing wrong with it. If you just want to try it out to get used to it, see if you like it, yeah, cheaper paint's fine. If that's what you're asking. I agree with what Nathan is saying. He said, watercolors, you can get away with cheaper paint, but you'll end up using more paint, and pro paints are more saturated. Exactly, that's what I was saying. There's more pigment in those pro paints, professional paints. And then he said, what you can't cheap out on is paper. Definitely agree. If you want to try watercolor paper, buy a sheet of Arches, at least 140 pound cold press, 100% cotton. You got to get 100% cotton paper. That's usually the best. But you can use cheap paint on that. It's not a big deal. But at least get a good cheap paint if you're going to try it. You know, don't get like kid paint that's a little chalk blocks. You know, get paint that you can squeeze out of the tube. All right, we're going to move on to the next reference here. So the one that's in shadow, and you can see I have a secondary light source on it, so more reflected light coming in. So we'll try to play around with that a bit more. But we'll take a little break here. Be sure to check out my website, shaverfineart.com. Got some drawings like the ones you see here. Got some watercolors and gouache paintings like the ones you see here. Bunch more stuff. So definitely be sure to check it out. I also have a support page where you can donate to me, support me on Patreon, check out my t-shirts available. Also some music that I create on my own. A bunch of music tracks, like 25 different music tracks, all different styles of music, piano, hip hop, stuff like that, instrumentals. So yeah, I also have a blog on there with a lot of different articles about painting and plein air and all kinds of different stuff to help you out. And I also have a tutorial page for oil painting and some drawing stuff on there, but I'm going to be working more on that in the future, get some better stuff up there. So thank you guys for staying tuned in. Appreciate it. So this one's mostly shadow. We're going to try to figure this one out. So pretty much start off the same as the other one. You know, we'll put general tone down for the light, for the basically the mid-tone, the light colors. Not much very bright highlights here on this one, but maybe I'll invent some of that. We'll keep maybe this plain really light, and you know, maybe this one under the eye, maybe the nose we'll keep completely light, white of the paper, we'll see. But all of this can be filled in. All of this can be filled in. That's true. Kuwait Asami says, once you try the more expensive paint, it's hard to go back. It's definitely true. You know, once you try the really good stuff, especially with paper, once you try the good paper, man, there's no way. It feels so bad to go back, because you just don't have that same level of control that you have with the more expensive paper. And I would definitely agree with the paint, you know. It's kind of like lifestyle, you know. Once you have like a really great, good lifestyle, you're living in a mansion, you're rich, it's hard to go back to, you know, regular old house every day. Of course, I wouldn't know how that is, but I'm saying I imagine that's how it is. You know, it's hard to go, once you get used to something that's really good, feels really nice, it's hard to go back to something that's not as good. Just trying to make sure, keep the light there. Got to be really careful here around this eye. So there's the top eyelid there that I want to keep the white of the paper. All right. Looks good. So there's light versus shadow. I mean, really. Yeah, let's do it that way. Let's do light versus shadow, and then I'll put in a core shadow. Once this dries, we'll dry it real quick. I felt the same with fancy bread. Yeah, exactly. You know, like you get like good food or something, it's hard to go back to like the cheap stuff, you know what I mean? When you get something quality. It's like, man, when you get like some good like, what do they call that? Like a good loaf of bread, like French bread or something. It's hard to go back to like sliced, pre-cut, processed bread, you know? You like the stuff that's warm, they just cooked it that day, you know, you buy it. Oh, it's so good. That's a good point, Kuwait Asami. He says that it depends on your style of painting. I found this one artist that uses dabbing, and he paints on cheap paper. It looks much better on it than it does on cotton. Good point. Good point. I mean, that's it. That is something to take into consideration. Depends on how you paint, what you're trying to create, what you're doing. Yeah. Brushes don't really matter. You just have to get used, whatever brush you use, you just have to get used to it and know how to use it. A lot of my paintings, a lot of my really, really good paintings of plein air paintings of watercolor that I like, I did with like crappy, cheap, synthetic, awful brushes. It's just, you gotta learn how that brush reacts. So yeah, good point. Somebody, Matthias says, you have to find the combination of materials that gives you the result you want. Well said, my friend. Exactly. You know, if you can afford it, then just get the good stuff, you know? Don't mess around. Just go get the good stuff and start out with that. You know, you can cut up a big sheet of watercolor paper. It's like $6 or $7 US dollars. You cut it down into squares like this, and then you just play around. See, you know, just try to figure out how things react. Like, okay, I'm gonna do a wash. Okay, what happens if I just add water to that wash? You know, what happens if I put pigment into that wash? Like, start playing around, and then, okay, what happens if I let that dry and then I paint transparently over it? Okay, what if I add water over it, you know? You just try to figure out all these different kinds of techniques, different things that can happen. All the different things. Okay, what if I use the paint opaquely? What if I use it a lot thicker? Okay, what if I thin it down a lot? You know, you just figure out all this stuff. All right, so I'm going to go in with the core shadow now. Let's try to see what happens here. So the core shadow is the darkest shadow. It's not the dark accent, but it is the darkest shadow usually. You have the core shadow and then you have reflected light. So for this, the core shadow is in the middle because the reflected light's coming in from this side. So like a secondary faint light source coming in, or bounced light or something. So that core shadow is right up against the lights and the midtones. But over here it's also dark as well, because you have the eye, the angle of the eye there makes it really dark. So we'll give that a shot. We'll see what it looks like. Just keep it really dark. But it's good to try to connect all these darks if you can. And the top lip is usually almost always darker than the bottom lip because of the way it's facing. It doesn't catch as much light. It just doesn't happen, you know. This core shadow I'm adding is actually pretty dark compared to the rest of it. I may have to glaze this whole thing just to bring all the value down. That's all right. It's very strong contrast here we're seeing. You know, not on the reference, but in the painting at least, we're seeing so it's interesting to just experiment with this. Having a lot of fun trying these different kinds of things out. Different methods of painting, seeing what happens if I do it this way, you know. Okay. The eye looks a little weird. The eye is the only part that's really has a gradient here because it's actually spherical. So there we go. But the eyelids are definitely in shadow, so I'm gonna definitely tone these down. This is also in shadow over here too. There we go. Interesting, interesting. I think I went too dark too fast, but I was curious of trying to put in core shadow here. Just see what that does, you know. But really, try to connect all this. And the core shadow really continues up here. So this is a pretty strong statement of reflected light, core shadow against light. So right now we have kind of 2 to 3 values in the dark, 1 value in the light. So I'm just experimenting here, folks, just experimenting. It's really what this whole week's about for me. Playing around, portraits, trying out some stuff, seeing what happens. So what I can do, put in very light wash for like some midtones. See what that does. Oh, should have kept that light. Oh well. Well, it's down the mid-tone, mid-plane here. Just curious, when you study art, paint at college, what do they try to teach you? I don't know. I never studied art like this in college. So, looking at it now, this reflected light is really the same value as these midtones. So I need to darken. I knew I was going to have to darken all this again, because I didn't do it dark enough the first time, but that's all right. You know, we just went slow and steady here with these shadows, but we can just glaze it again. Add some more pigment. And then this core shadow area needs to be darker. Ooh, maybe not that dark, but I'll try it. Try and work with it. Dry this thing up. What made me want to paint? We did, in one of my classes, I went to school for graphic design, and one of the classes was like, it was called Color and Composition. And that was the one class where we experimented with traditional paint. We did like color pencil, we did watercolor, acrylic. We did like one piece in each of those mediums. And I got hooked on watercolor from that class. So I just started painting after that. Did you enjoy art in school? No, I did not. I really didn't. I always thought the assignments they gave were stupid. Like, I just thought it was always dumb stuff. It's like, you know, draw this thing, da 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 da, or, you know, just like, I wanted to do what I was interested in, you know. And I understand you got to learn like basics and fundamentals, but sometimes it's just the assignments are just really dumb, so stupid. Yeah, the more you layer, the less water you should use in gouache painting. At least that's how it works for me. Yeah, that's how it works in watercolor too, actually. At least that's how I try to think of it. You get more and more like opaque, less water, more pigment as the layers go on, you know. Sometimes you can go back and glaze, you know, if you have to, kind of like I just did now, but it just depends. I knew this one was going to be more challenging because it's mostly shadow, and I always struggle with that kind of stuff. So I still think this reflected light's pretty too bright. Let's lighten this up a bit. So usually the plane right above the eyes is really the darkest thing, it looks like, it seems. You know, depends on where the light's coming from. Obviously, if the light's coming from the bottom, that's not going to be the case. But most light, natural light and stuff comes from up above. So that's what we're seeing here. Just don't want to fuss too much with this eye. Looks good enough. Still just trying to keep it simple. Simplified, trying to. But it is difficult because there is so many subtle changes and stuff, but it's kind of difficult to keep this like 2 values in the light, 2 values in the dark, but 2 to 3 in each. 2 to 3. Are you thinking about adding a background to those? I could. What did you have in mind? I didn't think about it, but it could reveal the face on this side, right? That would kind of help this one. If I did like a gray background. Let's do it. Let's see what it looks like. I didn't even think about it, to be honest. But I feel like it needs it now that you pointed it out. Let's just do it. Let's just do it. Helps me be a little loose, more loose too, kind of like that. It's pretty fun. It's pretty fun. Light against dark and dark against light. Definitely gives more context to these values here. Actually, this could be turned down. That's probably the best it's gonna get. Yeah, it definitely creates a little more context to these values. And let's see, the light source is coming from up here, so this stuff down here will be darker than all that stuff up there. Should I put a background on the other one too? Might as well, right? Make them both kind of consistent, I guess. See what happens. How long have I been on here? Hour, 2 minutes. Okay, 62 minutes. Yeah, sometimes I do have a tendency to go dark on the first wash rather than building it up, but it just depends. Okay, all right. Let's see what that looks like. Kind of cool, pretty cool. Zoom these out. Not bad. Not too bad. Definitely different in lighting. Definitely struggled a bit more with this one, I think. Just those different. Trying to still feel like there needs to be more continuity between these darker shapes. And this is dry, so I feel like this plane here could just be, I think we just trying to connect that dark shape a bit more so it's more solid. And basically what I'm doing is saying screw reality, screw the reference. I want to do what makes a better, gives a better look to it, you know, at that point. Because now I have all these values down, I don't really need to go to the reference, you know, if I don't need to. I can just kind of do what makes sense here a bit more. I'm gonna darken this neck down here because it's a lot lower, it's farther away from the light source. It'll still appear like it's in light. We just don't want it as bright as the face because that's really what we're going for there. So pretty interesting, pretty different. It was interesting doing these and seeing the result, seeing, you know, when you just focus on these simple planes, how light kind of, where the light hits and what it connects with or the shadow hits and where the shadow connects with, the difference with the reflected lights. Yeah. I think at the end of the week, Thursday and Friday, when I do a regular portrait study from a photo, I'm going to use this head and try to light it in the same scenario and have this kind of have the photo reference of one of these heads next to the portrait, so that, you kind of get a reference for the planes as I'm doing the actual portrait and seeing what relates, what doesn't, yeah, I kind of got a little streaky here with the paint, but not too bad. Not too bad. I like the mysterious quality of this one, the shadow here. So that's something to take note here as well. So if something's more in light and there's a little bit of shadow, the shadow, you don't really, I don't want to say you don't really want to do that, but normally you keep it more mysterious. You don't really define stuff in the shadows, to some extent, depending on your style, what you want to do. But if something's mostly in shadow, then the light gets simplified. You know what I mean? So there's more, you can see more into the shadows here, a little bit more variation of things. And in the light, that's kind of what we want to do here, is have a little more, I could even do a little more variation in some of these planes if I wanted. But you can see the shadows, I kind of just simplified everything, made it more mysterious looking. And if you compare that to the light over here, it's the same, kind of the same thing. You just get the top eyelid of the light of the eye there. It's the same with color as well. So like if your complete painting is in shadow and there's just a little tiny bit of light, like you're gonna have more variation and more, everything's gonna be more exposed for the shadow. Like the shadows will be a lot lighter, more variations within all the shadow, and then the things in the light will just be like 1 to 2 values, very basic, simple colors, very simplified colors. But then in the shadow, you could have all these color variations. But if it's the opposite, then the shadows you want to kind of simplify, keep them very simple, and then in the light you can vary the color a bit. That's just an idea. That's one way to think about it. No worries, Jeremy. It's all good. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think the value studies are really important because then you just focus on the value. You don't have to worry about color, temperature, color, like you said, Nathan. Yeah, it's very straightforward. It's basically like drawing with paint. You just worry about edges, which I didn't even worry about edges in this because it's just straight. Just everything's straight. You don't have to worry about edges. So I literally focused on the drawing a little bit and the value. So I think that's a cool study, cool thing to do. So there's the references again. But yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, I think tomorrow I'm going to do facial features. So a little bit more study into just eyes, nose, mouth, maybe some ears as well. Do that with pen and ink, or pencil, pen and ink. Try to get a lot of that kind of filled in. Maybe I'll do like a simplified version of an eye and then like an actual study of an eye. Stuff like that. Just kind of study the features and understand the different planes that make up these features and how to draw them. So that's kind of what I'm going to study tomorrow a little bit. And this week by no means is like a comprehensive study. I mean, this is just not even scratching the surface at all. It's just the very, very tip of the iceberg. There's no tip to this iceberg. You can't even see the iceberg. That's how I haven't even gotten into it, Mary, at the end of the week, I will be using color, full color for the last 2 portraits. When I do just regular portrait studies, I'll be using color. For sure. But maybe in the future I will do monochrome portrait studies again, just to keep hammering in that value study. But anyway, guys, I think that's pretty much it. Be sure to check out my website. Like I said, got all kinds of stuff on there: drawings, paintings, art, blogs, support page. Check out my music on there, my Bandcamp, schaeferart.bandcamp.com, something like that, I think. So yeah, definitely check all that out, and donate to me if you feel like what I do is helped you out a little bit, if you can do that. If not, it's all good. But I appreciate everybody watching videos, tuning in, and anyway, take care of yourself. I'll see you on the next one, hopefully tomorrow, and we'll study some facial features. Should be cool. Take care of yourself. Peace.